All right, today we're going to go over something that is a project that a lot of kids like to do is they have a little bit of free time, and I know that sometimes during when you're waiting for glue up and things like that, that there's some free time to make some different things. So one of the things that I like to do, and something that's often useful, is to make a scrap wood end grain cutting board. Now, most cutting boards that I've seen that a lot of kids like to put together are if you just take a bunch of different wood like so and you glue this together, okay? And you take a bunch of different strips out of the scrap bin, you just keep grabbing them, you glue them all together, you essentially plane them all down to the same thickness, you try to get some different species of wood, and then you make that a cutting board and you cut it into a shape. With this, what we're going to do is an end grain cutting board. So what's an end grain cutting board? That means if you took all of these boards and you stuck them up on end like this, so that this is the grain that you see, instead of seeing the edge of the board, you see the end of a board. So this is the end grain cutting board. What's the benefit of an end grain cutting board? Two things. It is a prettier piece of wood when you put it together, and secondly, it is stronger. So the first thing I did is I came over and I went into the scrap shelf unit in the back room, you know, the back wood closet right there on the left side. There's that scrap shelf unit, which is material that kids will cut off of a longboard and put it in there. And so this here is a piece of oak. This piece of wood, as you can see, it's kind of reddish. This is cherry. This piece of wood, which is most of you made your footstools out of when you first started Wood Tech 1, this is poplar. And this piece of wood is, I bought some slippery, or some sassafras last year, and this is a piece of cut off sassafras. Now, all of this stuff is all rough cut and it needs to be planed. So the first thing we're going to do is just clean plane these boards. So, but before I do that, I'm going to just cut them to all roughly the same length. So I'm going to pick the smallest size, and I'm going to cut them all to roughly the same length. So if we go like this here, this first piece of wood that I have is my smallest. So this is roughly 2 foot long. So I'm going to make them all roughly 2 foot long. So I'm going to go over here, just mark them all, cut them on a radial arm saw, and then we'll stick them through the planer so that we're dealing with boards that are all about the same length. Cut this one this way because that has a little check in the end, and that's 2 foot, and then we'll cut this one to 2 foot. There we go. And we'll make some quick cuts here, and then we'll send them through the planer. So now all these boards are roughly 2 foot long. Now we can take it over, send them through the planer. All we're looking to do is to clean plane them. We're not looking to get them down to a finished thickness because, to be honest with you, thickness really doesn't matter if you're just taking some scrap wood out of the bin and putting it all together. So we're going to take these, we're just going to plane them to a rough thickness. And let's get this out of the way so you can see what's going on here. There we go. And we'll crank this planer up. These boards are all 1 1/8. So we'll crank this up. There we go. Turn the dust collector on. side. Make sure you put your ugly side up to the 2 boards. This should be our last run. Now what you want to do is take them over to the table saw. Whoops. We're going to take them over to the table saw here. We're going to rip them into strips. That. Set these. Let's get a rough measurement on them. Try to get it to look as symmetrical as we can. It's not that big of a deal if you're just using wood with a fine right around, but let's get 1.5 inch strips out of it. Oh, we'll set this to 1.5. That'll give us roughly 3 strips out of each board. Whoops, we got to join them first. Sorry about that. Join these first. So we'll take them over to the joiner. Move you guys around over here. There we go. We'll put them on a joiner real quick, get a jointed edge. Then we'll take them to the table saw. Now we can rip them to width. There we go. now that we have all of our pieces, we'll take them over here. We're going to start to put them together. Now the thing about this project as opposed to a regular project is, or a regular cutting board that you would do, there's actually 2 steps to it. You gotta put them together, then you actually gotta cut them all back apart again. So there's an extra step to it, and that's why it takes a little bit longer. You know, so follow along with me here. I'll show you how we do it. So the first thing we do, put these aside. I'm gonna move this one up out of the way. I did this demonstration for cabinetry class a little bit ago. Then we take our clamps, get them ready, got our glue ready. Now what you want to do, take these like so, and just get a pattern going. So if I go with a cherry board, then a poplar, then a sassafras, then an oak. So I'll go cherry, poplar, sassafras, and oak. Same thing. Just keep that pattern going. And you don't have to make a pattern. Cherry, poplar, forgot my poplar, sassafras, and oak. And then what we have left over is a sassafras and a poplar. So it's no big deal. If you want to keep a pattern, you can take these last 2 and throw them out. I'm just going to include them in on the project. So normally I would tell you to flip your grains, but because you're going to cut these all back apart and put these grains back up on end, it's not that important. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm just going to put all these together like so. And lay them flat so I can get some glue on. Get them all kind of straight at the end. I'm going to show you a little trick here so you don't have to waste a lot of time gluing these. You're going to take that, you're going to take 2 clamps, you're going to put one on either end. That's why we cut them to roughly 24 inches so they were all the same size. It just makes it easier for glue up. But if you just wanted to go into the scrap barrel and pick up some sticks and throw one together real quick, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. So I clamp them together like this here, just relatively. Take your glue. Don't get crazy with it, but get kind of crazy with it. So you're going to go up and down each board. Put a pretty good adamant amount of glue on there. There we go. And I'm sure all of you have used one of these before, but this is just a paint roller. Go ahead and paint all that glue on every board. If you see that you're going to need a little bit more, that it looks a little thin, you can always use a little bit more. Try to go a little light at first so you don't have to waste a ton of glue. Now you have to remember, normally we put glue on both surfaces. On this one here, we're not going to put glue on both surfaces, so I want it to be a little bit heavy on the glue so it transfers over to the adjacent board that it's going to be up against. So we're just going to go like this here. That keeps your fingers out of it. I know some of you guys like to do this anyway. That gives you something to do your next class. You pull that glue off your fingers. But for this purpose here, we're going to try to keep the glue off our fingers altogether. Once you do that, what I do is I take this here, put this aside, squeeze these clamps real tight again. There we go. So put it up on end. I'm going to grab my clamps. There we go. I should have opened those before I did this, but I didn't, so live and learn. Go like this here. There we go. Now I'm going to lay this back down. Take my 2 clamps off. These get put aside. We'll wipe those down later, get the glue off them. Now all you're going to do, these 2 are like this, and now you're just going to go like this and keep the same pattern going. Flip them straight up on one another. Okay? what I like to do then, give yourself a little bit of pressure in, make sure you're over top your cardboard. It's going to save you a lot of cleanup later. Put that one in, get your end even. To get your end even, I just like to put a stick or a roller, preferably not a roller, I don't want glue all over it. Grab something to get your end a little bit even. Now, when you go to put this board together, you're just going to snug it up. You're not going to go crazy with it. Snug that one, snug this one. If you go crazy with it at first, because you just put glue on there, the glue acts like a lubricant a lot of times, and it'll shift these boards up and down, and it makes a mess out of them. So now I'm going to grab a couple more clamps, just to put in the middle. And we want to try to keep these as thick as possible. So get this out a little bit. There we go. We'll put one more clamp on, just for good measure. Now, once you get them snugged up, now you can take them and drive them home. Get yourself some good pressure going all the way across. There we go. There we go. Now this is only step one. Some people take this thing back to the planer the next day, call it quits, it's done. But we're not going to take it to the planer. Well, we are going to take it to the planer, but then we have to cut it all back apart again. So this is just step one of an end grain cutting board. So this is just something if you have a little bit of extra time and you're looking for another project to build. If you jump on Etsy or you jump on eBay or you jump on Amazon, you'll see that end grain cutting boards go for a lot more money than any other cutting board. And for two reasons. Number one, they're better because they're harder at the end of the board. And number two, they take twice as much work because you got to glue them together, cut them apart, and glue them together. So I'm just giving you kind of an idea on how this works. And then we're going to pick up there and go on part two next week. So step one.